everyone, to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, your host and founder and CEO to Guide to HR. Today, we're going to be talking about the moment of our working life, the culture and the working shift that we're seeing right now, and some other fun things. I'm so excited to have Allie Stark on the call with me today. Allie, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Guinevere. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Allie Stark. I've worked in the health and wellness space for the last 20 plus years, which has really spanned from yogic and mindfulness training into getting a master's degree in integrative health, which brought me into health and wellness coaching and eventually life coaching and leadership coaching. And now I run two different businesses. One is Allie Stark Wellness, which is a boutique life and leadership coaching practice where we really support people on a deep one-on-one level. And Noria is an online learning and development platform that I have that's more of a group coaching capacity that is teaching leaders how to step into a new era of living and leading. So that's a little about me.
And I love your story about the name of your tool. Tell the audience the story, because it's just too amazing not to share it.
Thank you. So Noria is the name of the platform. And as I was sharing with you, this sort of came about. It was, I want to say, almost like a happy mistake. We had a different name and there was a big trademark issue that was pending with it. So in the final hour, one of our team members actually brought the name up, Noria, and Norias are ancient water wheels that were used to draw water up from a riverbed, a river, just any body of water in a community, and was used to actually tend to giving water, clean water to the entire community. And the thought is that the community then tends to the land that helps to create this regenerative cycle. And so much of what we're teaching is this idea of regenerative leadership. So we are the Noria for the leaders, the managers, the small business owners that we support so that they can be the Norias for their communities and the ways that they're being of service to the world.
I just love that. It's such a great name for what you're doing. So, okay. So what are these individuals and or clients that you have, companies that you have? What are some of the trends you're seeing that they are needing support, guidance, and just ways to make improvements in their leadership style and their everyday interaction with their teams?
So, and some of this, Guinevere, may be like, I tend to work with, it's not all of the time, but oftentimes I work with clientele that's around my age. So I feel like I'm working with a lot of leaders and business owners in the midst of like a modern midlife crisis is how it's sort of presenting itself.
Yeah, that feels right.
And I think that, what's coming out of that is how do we create a working culture that feels sustainable? When kind of the predominant noise right now is productivity and advancements in technology and how AI is taking over jobs and do more with less. I think that a huge issue that's showing up is how do we maintain a level of well-being? How does that imbue the culture? And that can be whether you are a solopreneur or all the way up to, a 500 plus, 10,000 plus person company. Is how do you actually imbue the culture with well-being, which in some ways is about slowing things down and allowing connection and belonging and humanity to be at the epicenter of how you're running your business.
Yeah. And I take that to heart too, because it's like it's slowing down. But then as an entrepreneur, we want to do everything and we want to do it yesterday. And how do you coach someone where it's like, yeah, I've noticed myself, I've noticed other founders as well. It's like, because you want to do it all, you end up, what I say is I bit off more than I should chew, right? Like sometimes that burger or that piece of food that you have is so delicious, you kind of go for that bigger bite and you're like, oh gosh, it doesn't even fit in my mouth kind of thing, right? But you gotta finish it. So like, have you had founders or individuals that are in that situation? And if so, how have you coached them to help them get through it, learn from it to never do that again?
I mean, oh my God, it's like, what entrepreneur or business owner do you know that hasn't done that?
Guilty.
I think there's a couple things. So one is it's really nice to actually reverse engineer things. So to look at the goal or the direction in which you're wanting to go and really reverse engineer things and break it down into tangible bite-sized pieces, just to use your analogy. So, my background in training as a coach, specifically a health and wellness coach, is really about behavior change. And behavior change applies in the context of leadership, parenting, all of these sorts of things. If you're trying to get to the end goal and kind of doing it all at once, all the things all at once, it's sort of inevitable that you're going to fall on your face. And so how do we actually like back into it, reverse engineer it, and create strategy, systems, and really like bite-sized digestible pieces to get you there, which can be done through a lot of different strategic approaches. It's really like visioning and then pulling back. This is a lot through creative conversation, creative direction, understanding what platforms and systems are going to support people. And I would say one of the biggest pitfalls that I see, especially in, I don't know if it's always new business owners, but I just think entrepreneurs kind of like to wear all of the hats, is that we forget to delegate and we forget when we should outsource. And, there's creative, if you don't have the budget to outsource, there's creative ways to do it. Like you can do a collaboration or a trade or offering of services, which, is all a part of, to me, creating a more generous economy. So I just think that so much of it is and at least at this point in my career, I'm really aware of what I'm not good at. And I spend the money or however it is that I'm creating that reciprocal exchange to have people help me who will do something better in a fraction of the amount of time.
Yeah.
So getting help, knowing that you're not supposed to need everything, backing into things so it's much more digestible, creating behavior changes within the business slowly and over an extended period of time, and then remaining adaptable and flexible because shit's inevitably going to hit the fan at some point.
For sure. And probably multiple times too, right? Yeah. Being agile and being able to skirt that or revise something or have a different strategy. So many times that happens in business, and not even just when you're starting. I've worked with other clients that they're 500 employees and they're having to pivot and do a different strategy. So it's not just when you're 5 people. It's kind of never ending. So we talked earlier before we started recording about the shift of working and how it's still kind of this unknown. Where's it going to land? What's going to happen? The cultural movement of that. So it's creating a lot of isolation and burnout. What is some of the methods or support that you are having your leaders, your customers and clients give to their people in order to help not only themselves, but their direct reports as well?
It's such a nice question. I really feel like we are on this a little bit of a blank page. It's like that chapter between two chapters or the space between two stories. And we're culturally very uncomfortable with being in uncertainty and unknown. And I think the world is becoming more and more nonlinear. And unexpected. And so much of it actually becomes that leadership truly is an inside out job. It is about really learning practices in nervous system regulation and understanding when you are dropping into a space of fight or flight or rest and relaxation. So ideally figuring out how to calm and regulate your nervous system, which can be done through a myriad. It's both mindfulness-based practices, it's breath-based practices, awareness building practices, understanding the level, like a concept that we use in Noria is understanding your inner well. So when are you feeling depleted and on the verge of burnout? When are you feeling really energized and filled up? Like there's a lot of water in your well. And all of that stuff, those are all awareness building skills. So it's just a skill or a small tool that you do a little bit of every day that help grow your awareness. And then you model those skills and creating of that culture to your team members. So I'll just use kind of a fascinating example. I just had a session with a client today and it feels very apropos. He went from being a freelance creative director and is now working in-house.
Mm.
And on the session that I had with him, it was like he was amped. I mean, just totally, I've kind of never heard him this way exactly. And I started to ask some questions about the culture, and the culture was about like efficiency, moving really fast, getting a lot of things done. And, the conversation was a lot about like, how does your body feel in this environment? And how do we slow you down a little bit, even if it's counterculture? And if you're feeling it, other people are feeling it. And in the owning of a business and running of a business, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Mhm.
So you have to find ways to implement pause and space and pulling away. And we're not supposed to be productivity machines.
Yeah, so true. And if we treat ourselves like that, we're going to end up with the heart attacks, burnout in the ground way too early. Like we need the mental space and just to stop and relax and let our bodies catch up with our mind sometimes. And that then actually gives you the space to be creative and to think differently. Like how many times have you just stopped and had something to drink, coffee, hot tea, chocolate, whatever, listen to the birds, listen to the wind going through the trees, and just letting your mind just kind of meld into the moment and not be like thinking. I know sometimes I have to use like my husband gave me a trick. Think of a whiteboard and don't let anything get on that whiteboard. That's so hard. It's so hard not to let something get on that whiteboard. You're like, oh no, nothing on the whiteboard, nothing on the whiteboard.
And like Guinevere, as you're talking, I always feel like, people want like this is the 3-step solution to calm your nervous system, and I struggle a little bit with that because everyone is so different. Like the way our nervous system, it's genetic, we're born with it, and then it's programmed by our lived experiences, trauma, family dynamics, etc. So I really don't believe in a one size fits all approach. And what I do believe in is like resource yourself via reading or a coach or a therapist, whatever it is, to find the unique calibration for you. Like the whiteboard may or may not work for you, and it
Yeah.
totally may, and I think that also it's like it will change over time because it's an ongoing practice of um being in touch with what's going on internally, and it will completely depend on how much sleep you've gotten and where you're living and what's going on with work and if you have kids, all that sort of stuff. So I really just think that you have to be really thoughtful of like I like having lots of tools in my toolbox so that I can draw from them and really use them uniquely depending upon who I'm working with and what they're working through.
Well, I think that's so great too, because in that moment, like, oh, the whiteboard might work in that moment, but then 3 days later, it might not. And so having a couple tools to fall on for any individual, it seems like that would be really smart. Just like in business, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. It's the same
Exactly.
concept, right? You want to have a
Exactly.
couple everywhere so that if one fails you, you have another way to get to that result you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Well, so tell me, what I love that story you gave about one of your clients. What's another story that you see is kind of like something that you get in that you get into or involved with someone and you're like, man, I just wish that I could have had the conversation with this person like 3 months ago or even a year ago and gotten in front of them and helped them to avoid this huge thing. Do you have a story to share that falls in that line?
It's funny because the thing that's coming up for me is like kind of answering your question and kind of not answering your
Okay,
question.
give it to me. It's fine. Yeah.
I think that so often people come in with business ideas that don't feel fully fleshed out, right? It's like whether it's an escape hatch and they're wanting to leave like a corporate setting, or they've seen someone else be highly successful in, selling a product similar to that or running a business like that. And what I really fall back on is your lived experience, like something that I would love to, share with people is like your lived experience actually helps create the roadmap. Your obstacles are the opportunity for how to be of service. So I will give you an example that's coming to mind. A client of mine came in wanting to create like an exercise form, like a form of an exercise product. And throughout the course of our time working together, she had previously had health complications and they wound up kind of getting increasingly more complicated. And she'd had breast cancer during our time of working together.
Wow.
Um, and this woman is a powerhouse. I mean, she's just incredible. And it was just like amazing to watch her. Like, she was like, I really don't identify with this term of being a survivor. And I really, all this kind of like unlearning, um, breaking out of cultural norms of how we like to put things in boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout our time of working together, it was sort of like, this thing that happened, which was challenging and tragic and hard, is actually opening up this realm of previously unknown possibility for what you could build, which I won't share what that was, but it was very much connected to her experience having cancer, going through a Western medical system, the lack of communication that exists between multiple providers when you're dealing with something complex like that, like cancer, autoimmunity, et cetera. And yeah, I oftentimes think like the business we're supposed to run or the thing we're meant to do in the world isn't actually that sexy or cool. It's based off of our lived experience, which then allows it to be really authentic and genuine to us.
I love that. And you really like that. It turns into a passion. And ultimately, that passion is what drives you to create that business and want it to be successful.
Yeah, and it allows you to continue to return to your why. So, I feel like something happened in the last 10 years or whatever where it's like only do work that's your passion, which I also don't totally like. Sometimes a job is a job. It's all cool. It's like I don't always feel that way, but I do think you have to have something that you can sink your teeth into that's connected to something more meaningful, more purposeful for you, more service driven and service oriented, because that's how we connect to the world around us.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so Allie, I'd love to not just test you, but test me and give a little bit of authenticity to the podcast. Let's talk a little bit about me. Maybe you can coach me a little bit here. So, built my business about 3 years ago. I started because I got a pretty horrific ejection, I'll say, pretty scarring experience of getting ejected out of my last corporate job, and took some time off, healed my wounds, thought about what I really wanted to do, and I was like, yeah, I want to do it all over again. I love this startup stuff. Let me get into this. So built my business, really wanted to get in front of founders to help them make better people operations decisions earlier on in their business life cycle, and that way they don't make the same mistakes I've seen other founders do, which is get too far along and then realize, oh, I don't have any people operations. How do I hire 100 people tomorrow? And so that is why I've done it. I've done it to get, just to help these founders make good people operation decisions that will help them be successful. And 3 years later, I'm still doing it and I love it. So that's a little bit about like why I started my background, but what questions do you have for me, and where do we want to take it from now?
Well, I think there's two curiosities that come up. So one is this it sounds like a catalyzing moment when you kind of were kicked out of your old corporate job. And you may not want to share this because this is a little bit digging, but where I go is like, what did you learn about yourself in that moment? Like what came up, what self-responsibility was there? And how did that lend itself to the next iteration of what you built? So I don't want to convolute.
I'll answer that. I don't
Yeah,
mind.
so I'll ask that first.
Yeah. I will say, I think for me, it was more of I was looking for like, what did I do wrong? What could I have done different? How can I learn from this experience? So that, I don't end up in the same situation. And it was a process of really trying to dig in. No one's perfect by any means, but what I actually came out of it was a truth, a belief that no matter what I could have done differently, this particular situation wasn't about me. It was about the CEO and how he manages and runs people. And nothing I could have done differently, in my belief, would have changed the outcome. I also truly am a believer. I'm in my faith, and I also feel like it was also partly God ejecting me out so that I could create this company I have now. And so lesson learned there is just I think for me it was more like don't take everything so personally, right? It's not always about you, it's about the business, it's about the business need. And I also would say I wish that the CEO and myself were had a little bit more grown up moment in saying, hey, you're no longer the right fit for the business. Let's talk about an exit strategy, what that can look like so that everyone involved, not just me, but my team who got totally just like thrown to the wolves after I left, like, how do we make this be a positive experience for everyone? Let's be adults about this and let's execute on that exit strategy. And that's something I've learned from a client that I'm working with. And I love how they just really, it's just such an adult professional conversation. Because at some point in time, you or the business are no longer going to be a fit for each other. And that's okay. I love being in small startup companies. This company was getting to be a bigger company. They needed someone that had experience with a thousands plus employee population. I didn't want to go there in regards to like, I don't enjoy being in a bigger company like that. And they needed that experience. What a different outcome that could have been if we could have had a adult conversation like, look, this is what we need. We don't think that you're the right fit for what we need anymore. Let's talk about that and see where we go from there.
I think that's so beautifully stated on so many accounts. So one is like oftentimes it's not about us,
Yeah.
right? So I think that it's really important to self-reflect and see where you need to take accountability and responsibility. But what I'm actually hearing is the business was growing in ways that weren't aligned with what's most authentic, genuine, true to who you are and what you enjoy doing. This is a super normal, it's growing pains. That's literally what it is.
100%.
And there's so much opportunity to actually have questions that empower people rather than leave them in the dust or the dirt, or you continue people pleasing and it's the wrong fit for your business.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining for you, based off of what you are sharing with me, that so much of what you do in terms of your business is like coaching people around how to have those conversations, right? Yeah. It's like the coach approach and using curiosity and giving and receiving really honest feedback. And so I'm imagining that the experience actually transformed into how you support other people and their people practices.
Yeah.
True. And I think that's like just so rad. That's how we're supposed to that's how we're supposed to pay it forward.
Yeah. And it's so true because there are so many conversations I have where I get into a business, they're pre-seed, series A, series B, in that moment becoming series C. Usually that's where they become a growth stage company. The people at the leadership team, the people in the business, they have given the blood, sweat, tears, their life basically to help the business get to this place, but there may not be the right people to move it to D and IPO land or wherever you're taking
Absolutely.
the business, right? And that's okay. And I've been preaching that for a long time, but it was like the reality is that how you execute that can be such a game changer. And you can cause disruption and harm to your business, or you can do it in a way where you treat everyone like a human being, an adult and a professional. And let's have a sit down moment, right? There's so many times where it's like, let's talk about what the business needs. Let's talk about what you need. Where are you going? Does this fit? Does this still align? If not, then let's just talk about it. And let's see how do we support each other to move on and still grow? And man, what a difference that would have made if I had a CEO who could have had that conversation with me.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a founder that I work with, who she's young, she's incredible. It's like amazing what she's built. And the business is in a really significant place of growth. It's preparing for an eventual sale, a large sale, and the people who got her to where she is today aren't, from 0 to 1 aren't the right to go from 1 to 2. And that's not, to me, what that's a reflection is they did their job. Like they were exceptional at what they were hired to do. Mm-hmm. And I think it really leans into a previous question that you had asked is like, we're not meant to we have certain zones of geniuses, and the more we can lean into those while still growing ourselves in other areas, the better.
Yeah.
And you may be someone who does really well working with small startups, and that's your zone of genius, and it's what you like. It's
Yeah,
what feels
exactly.
most passionate and fun and joyful and nourishing for you.
Yeah, and if you flip it the other way, when you're a size 25, 30 employees, you're not going out and looking for your chief marketing, chief finance, chief whatever officer. You don't need that level,
Right.
right? It's the same concept, just in the sense of, okay, we have maybe more junior level experience. Maybe we have a director or a VP. I really now need a chief because now I'm at 500, or now I'm at a specific revenue that really calls for it, right? So I think if you can think about it from that perspective, I wouldn't hire above what I need.
Right.
Why am I keeping someone up below what I need? And one of my favorite things I learned from a community called Vistage is basically like, help them get to a point where they're going to a place where they can be more successful and it be a better fit for them. Help another company find another great employee by letting this one go, because this employee at your place, it may not be great, but they could be amazing at another place.
Yeah, it's very well stated. It's like, you're not meant to be with everyone that you date. That's just not.
Boy, would that be a crazy world, right?
You're
If you were
just
with
not
all the people
meant.
you dated.
Like, you don't have to force something that just doesn't feel right. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
in full agreement. And it's cool to like, again, there's this amazing book called The Awakened Brain by Lisa Miller. And the way she talks about it is the ideas of like red doors and green doors. And it's like when you get a red door, it inevitably opens up the green door. You have to sit in the space between, though. Like, you
Mhm.
have to trust. And I think that's a lot of downfalls when people are making transition. They want to know what's next. And I personally don't believe that that's how transition works. You have to leap into an abyss as long as you like,
Yes.
you want to make sure you can pay. Like, obviously, there's things about security and safety,
Yeah.
but there needs to be this kind of like murky space between where something can get revealed to you that if
Mhm.
you are forcing or controlling it ahead of time, you're never even going to get to see what's possible. And that is true with a business, as a, individual contributor, an employee, an employer, all those sorts of things.
100%. And it goes back to what we said earlier. Find that space to just let your brain be. Let those creative moments, let's sit in that quiet unknown space, because then that's when your creativity can take over. Thoughts that were in the back of your mind that are too soft can never be heard over all the other noise. Let those things come forward, because those are the things that are going to really impact you. And in the same vein, I'd say take the leap, but we do have bills to pay, right? We do, families and other obligations. So take the leap, but have your backup plan. Know that that leap, like for me, I took the leap to start my business. I gave myself 6 months.
Yeah.
That was my runway. If I couldn't make it work, I'd go back to find something full time. Here I am 3 years later. But you never know. It could have been 7 months in. I'm like, okay, back to full time. I got to find something, right? But I took the leap because I had a backup plan. I knew exactly when I had to change courses to make sure that my obligations were being met. And so I think if you can find a way to understand what that space you can give yourself to keep those obligations in play, what other obligations could you maybe say no to anymore, get rid of, right? Like a simple example is, do you really need 10 different streaming services? Like there's so many different things. This is not a financial call, but needless to say, if you can find a way to have that structure in place and know that you have that parachute, I guess you could say, right? You may or may not need it, but it's there on your back in case you do.
Yeah, and I would never ever coach someone to just quit their job when financial stress is going to be, up around the corner the next day. That's just not my
Yeah.
style. But I think to your point is like we actually get really comfortable and consume in a particular type of way.
Mhm.
And if you're willing to dismantle that a little bit and get into the discomfort, I just think it's like ripe with possibility. And you could get back to that lifestyle or most likely even greater. But I think there's like, risk. You got to risk comes in many, many forms. And it's not
Yeah.
just like, oh, I'm taking a leap of faith, but it's like, how am I showing up in this risk to adjust for it so that I can reap a reward?
I love that. I feel like we could continue talking, but as we wrap up, any last final thoughts, words of wisdoms that you want to give to the audience today?
Just, it's such a pleasure to chat and connect with you. These are obviously topics that I hold near and dear to my heart. And can I share with your audience where they can find me?
Yes, please. I'll
So
put it in the link below as well.
okay, great. So if anyone's interested in learning more on a one-on-one basis, I have my private practice, which is alliestarkwellness.com, ALLIESTARK wellness.com. And Noria, my online learning platform for leaders and business owners, is Hello Noria, NORIA.com. So you can find that's where all the socials and content and all of the extra stuff live.
Great. Well, thanks, Allie, for joining us today. And for those listening, thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thank you.